Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Stargirl Season 2, Episode 7. It's called Summer School, Chapter 7. I'm almost getting bored of telling you the Summer School part, because it's the same thing every episode, but full spoilers for the episode, and this one focuses on Yolanda. This kind of brings to a head a lot of the stuff that she's been going through this season. And I think I gave the show some credit a few episodes ago, back when they first kind of started bringing up the topic of her killing Brainwave, and they kind of had Mike reference his killing of Icicle being somewhat accidental, which comes back up again this episode. But I think I was very happy that it was dealing with the fact that she had done this. I think that was one of the things we spoke about in the season 1 finale, was like, well, are they going to like really handle the weight of what she's just done? She just killed someone. And then I think we even joked that Mike's also killed a bad guy too. Like, I guess everyone's just a killer in this, and I like that this season is really dealing with the weight of that. And this episode primarily is like really diving into it with Yolanda. So, and it does a couple of smart things. I think the first thing I'll say about this episode is that it's coming off of the most exciting episode the show might have had. Maybe not the best episode, but possibly it's in the conversation. And I think coming off of that, it was never going to be up to that level. You always have to kind of come down a little bit when you have one of those peaks. But I think the smart thing to do when you're coming off a peak like that, when everything in the show that it's building to is kind of having this big like moment that's the overall plot, is you then focus in on a character, and you give a character a big moment and a character a big story development. And that's what we got here with Whale Cat. And what's funny is that I think, I definitely heard someone suggest, maybe I brought it up before on one of the reviews, that Brainwave might have implanted himself into Yolanda's head. I don't think I had that idea, but I definitely saw someone have that idea a while ago. And of course, this episode also does something kind of smart where it actually has her interact with Eclipso. There's a scene at the diner, which is just a little taste of what Eclipso's starting to make people do, and he makes the other waitress pour coffee on the asshole. But she interacts with the little boy who's actually Eclipso, and it's just enough that it gives you a plausible enough sort of idea that at the end of the episode, and I kind of dug this, is that Courtney, when she's sitting down with the family, which, by the way, I like that they're just having straight up family meetings where they're just kind of putting everything on the table. Even Mike's included in all this completely open discussion about superheroics and whatnot. But Courtney says, like, was that actually Brainwave? And this episode did, for a while in the middle, it really feels like it's confirming that Brainwave's in her head. He flat out says as much, although I'm not actually 100% convinced. And this is the thing what I like about this at the end, is that Courtney says the question was that Brainwave? Was that Eclipso messing with her? And Yolanda rightly pointed out that she's been having some of this before Eclipso was around, so, a little bit maybe skeptical on that. Or the third option, is this just in her head? Is this just her dealing with this grief? And imagining that Brainwave might have put himself in her head is like one of the things she's done to herself, and this is more of a self-destructive coping mechanism, or whatever you want to call it. Perhaps because we're reminded of her mother this episode, we see her again, because she's been trained to hate herself, because she's been trained to kind of blame herself for things and not forgive herself. And I thought that question posed at the end was a really nice touch, because I think all three options are fine. I think all three options, none of them are bad. They all work. They'll all have purpose if they go down any path. But I actually think it all being in her head is probably the best of the three at this point. And I think, and there's hints, there's, sure, she sees Brainwave and he says a bunch of stuff to her, shows her Henry. She's floating at one point, and she's got her costume on. But as you can see at the end of this scene, when Courtney uses the staff to wake her up or bring her back to reality, we see that she's actually just cowering on the floor. She's just like on the church floor, and that's it. Like all of this could have been in her head, right? None of the stuff that felt like evidence in the moment that, oh, the brainwave is really there because he's making her float. No, there's absolutely nothing here to suggest she was really actually floating. No proof anyway. So I think it is actually the most interesting option, because it means that overcoming it is in a way simpler, because you don't have to deal with the fact that if brainwaves in her head, how did they defeat the brainwave that somehow put himself in her head? How did they get rid of that? That's a difficult question. Eclipso feels very plot kind of connected and reliant. I think it's actually more effective if it's just in her head and it's her having to overcome these fears, this self-doubt, this guilt, much of which has been imprinted on her from her parents. Like, that is a bit more of a powerful statement and a bit more of a powerful story, so that's kind of what I hope for. She completely shuts off from the world. She says she's never putting the costume on again. Partially blames Courtney for picking her to be Wildcat in the first place. Gets cut off from her job, like she's not talking to anyone, and it kind of feels that her parents are really, like, you know, locking her up, kind of Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street style, which I'm specifically saying because there's a scene in this which is very Nightmare on Elm Street. The scene where she effectively falls asleep in class and sees Henry outside the door, but kind of, like, you know, with his throat slit, and she follows him through the halls until she encounters Brainwave. This is a very similar to a Nightmare on Elm Street scene, where it's Nancy who falls asleep in class, if I remember right, and she sees, like, dead Tina being dragged and the girl with the glove. Anyway, so yeah, I thought this was all pretty solid stuff for the most part. I thought it was really nice that one of these characters gets such a strong focused episode where it really is delving into who they are and they've got actual drama to contend with. There was only one or two moments where I felt the performance was maybe struggling a little bit with the weight of the material, but for the most part not bad. And then I actually really liked as well the group scene where Courtney, having, like, seen she's going through some shit at school, says we have to tell the others, we have to tell Beth and Rick, and they have this meeting, and I really like this meeting for basically every character. I think this scene might actually have given Beth her most genuine dramatic scene that she's had, and maybe there's not a lot of competition, admittedly, but I think, you know, Rick trying to make Yolanda feel better, saying no, I would have done the same thing, made him likable, and it also feeds into something. But Yolanda coming back with, well, why didn't you kill Grundy? Because you couldn't, because you're a better person than I am. This was actually so well set up in the sense that this debate, like, everything she said back to him was so justified given the events of the show thus far, and given what Rick has been doing, and seeing what Rick has been doing, that she's calling him out, but not calling him out and saying you're a dick for not going through with it. Calling him out and saying, no, you're better than me because you couldn't go through with it. And Rick having to accept that. And Rick knowing that he's lying because he says, oh, my Uber ran out. No, you've been feeding Grundy. You've been taking, like, stacks and stacks of cheeseburgers and pizzas and whatever else out to Grundy in the forest. You know she's onto something here. So Rick realizing he's a better person than perhaps he perceived himself to be, and that making it more difficult to try and make Yolanda feel better, added, like, some weight to what she was saying. Like, it meant that, you know, you can't actually justify what I did. Not really. And, you know, we saw she was kind of tricked, and, you know, like, I mean, not really, but she was being tricked, but she, like, she acted out sort of realizing what the trick was, right? It was still out of anger, it was still out of whatever. So Rick's stuff in this scene, very good. And then I also loved the moment with Beth, because Rick says, look, you know, we all understand why you did this. This was the thing, you had to do it, right, Beth? And then just silence, and Rick just slowly turns, like, really? You're not going to back me up on that point? But what I liked about Beth's response here is that it would have been not terrible had she made more of a stand and said, you know, gave a speech about how she doesn't believe in killing, and, you know, we shouldn't do that as a team. We're the good guys, we're the heroes, we shouldn't do that. And I'm a fan of superheroes who don't kill, so I'm all for that viewpoint and this discussion being had. This is something that I think far too many people just shrug and just think in cold hard logic with superheroes and go, well, if Batman just killed the Joker, he wouldn't hurt anyone else and it would be better for everyone. Done deal. Just, case closed. No, it's more complex than that. So I'm all for that viewpoint being shared, but I actually really like that it felt so true to her character that she didn't feel brave enough to really make a speech or anything like that. She just sort of says, I don't know, and kind of like has a tear in her eye. Her voice is quivering as she says it. It felt really genuine to me in a way that felt very natural. It felt like it fit her character, it felt the team. It felt with the shock of just learning that one of her friends has murdered someone, even if that guy was a bad guy. It felt kind of natural to me, and I appreciate that. So some good stuff here in this plot. Good stuff. Obviously, it takes Yolanda off the board for a little bit. Obviously, we expect by the end of the season she's going to have some big triumphant moment. She will, in fact, put that suit back on and she's going to kick ass and it's going to be fun. But it should feel, hopefully, very, triumphant when she does. And I suppose one of the hints, like I said, Eclipso coming to her and interacting with her before all of this really got worse, would suggest to me that it is in her head, but Eclipso might have amplified it or made her doubt herself more, because that's what Eclipso does. He gets in your head and he sort of preys upon the feelings you already have and that kind of thing. So it's possible that technically both in her own head and Eclipso's kind of also partially to blame. Those could both be true, I suppose, and I wouldn't necessarily mind that so much either. It would still kind of work, because it would still be Yolanda having to overcome it and sort of be strong. It'd be a strong character beat for her to overcome it still, and it would still just be that simple, effectively. Or, you know what I mean? It'd be difficult for her, but it would be simple in a solution kind of way. But so the other hint towards that though is that the episode ends with the kid Eclipso going to Beth's house, and nothing happens. If anything, I was almost ready to critique this final little scene. Not that it was bad per se, just that it felt really tacked on. Like they need a cliffhanger. They need a moment to go to credits on. So they just we'll tease the kid outside of Beth's house, but nothing really happens. She's just sort of lying there asleep, and he's just outside the window. Or out, well, he's not floating. He's not a vampire, but he's not doing his Laszlo impression. But he's down on the grass, looking up and sort of being creepy and smelling. That said, though, because I'm talking this through now, I'm actually thinking it's justified, because I think the point is that if he did influence Yolanda and kind of heighten what was already in her head, I think the point here is that this is his next target is Beth. He's working through them and making them all doubt themselves and amplifying whatever they're going through. And you could even read that Beth's tossing and turning is an example of him already getting to her from outside, maybe. So yeah, okay. I've kind of talked myself into the ending scene being somewhat related and kind of working. So it felt kind of disconnected to me before, but I've kind of talked myself into it. So fair play. So what else do we have this episode? We had Courtney spending some time with Cameron, ignoring some texts to hang out with him, which was fine. Honestly, I was getting worried that I was going to have to sit through some Courtney Cameron romance stuff, but honestly, we saw it from a distance. Her making the choice was enough. That's all we needed. That was the important part, and then it happened off camera for the most part. So that's fine with me. We also have Mike helping to rebuild Stripe. Not much to say on the building itself. I did get a little chuckle out of the Stripe's hand doing the the devil horns, and Pat questioning if Mike was responsible. Also showing that the diamond has an effect still, even though it's broken up and kind of burned. Mike envisions leeches all over his body. Pat's hoping the diamond will still have some power. Maybe they can not repair it, it's a diamond, but maybe some magic-y stuff will work. And there's also teases of the shades. He's clearly hurt. Barbara hears his voice briefly, then sees a drop of blood come from a a bit of shadow. It teasing all these various little beats. And yeah, they're all churning away, and it's all good. This came after a scene. Like, I wonder if we needed to spend as much time on the scene before the drop of blood, which was the whole meeting. Maybe this place that they've saved the jobs of will become relevant later. But it kind of felt like we were getting a moment where, basically Barbara's like having to like argue against this other woman at work about what they're going to do about this mill that's going to close down, and everyone decides in her favor. I guess the important part of the scene is less the specifics of what they're doing and more that they're arguing it in like the memory of Icicle, of Mercat, and saying, if he were here, he would want to save it. And there is a moment where she looks at the painting of Icicle, and I think it's interesting that we have an episode here that has Barbara kind of like, nervously looking at a painting and remembering Icicle. The same episode that we have Yolanda seeing both Brainwave and Henry in her head. And then we even have Mike sort of like clarifying to his parents at the end that the killing of Icicle was accidental. I love how relevant everything in season 1 still is without us having to retread any of it. Like, we're not redoing plots, but it's just everything that happened still has a lasting impact. It has an effect. Barbara is naturally hesitant to trust someone like the Shade, and she's apprehensive because of, like, she did trust Jordan to a point. She was friendly with him. She didn't suspect that he was this evil person under the surface. So that's lingering there. Mike's, killing of him's lingering. Yolanda's killing of Brainwave and her history with Henry. All of that lingering. All of it matters. All of it's important, and I really appreciate the real strong continuity that seems to exist in this show. So that's very good. And I think, am I already done? This is a bit quicker. I guess I went through the Yolanda plot a little bit quicker than I normally would the A plot, but yeah, had some good moments in it. If anything, I mean, the only critique I would really have is maybe not every step of the story is necessarily like super exciting on its own. Like, I don't know if some of the early scenes with Yolanda back in the confessional booth or whatever, and sure, like, we all knew that we're going to do that thing where the priest was going to turn into Brainwave, not literally, but in the sense that we thought the priest was there, but then we see Brainwave through the little mesh. Like, all that makes sense. Like, of course they were going to do that. It was such an obvious thing to pull. I suppose just to mention the staff is getting better. I thought it would be completely out for a while, but right early on in the episode we see that it's kind of getting its strength back and it's nursing itself back to health, and so very good. It is interesting though that they've kind of established here that the staff did break Yolanda out of her like delusion. I wonder if that's something that's going to be useful going forward. I wonder if that's something that maybe keeps Courtney safe from being as manipulated as everyone else, which is going to force her to be the one to kind of rally everyone back together again. I could see some fun stuff with that potentially, and yeah, it's nice that we got a focus on another character this episode that really got some serious time to develop and deal with stuff, and it kind of feels like we might not see her for at least a couple of episodes now. So yeah, we'll see. But it was a good episode. It wasn't as good as last week's, because last week's was great and it was like one of the best episodes of the show, if not the best. So this had a lot to like go up against afterwards. But I think focusing on a character and just teasing that Eclipse was building to something. He seems to be weakening the team. The weather is getting worse despite the fact that it's 4th of July, or about to be 4th of July. So cool. There you go. That's Stargirl, Season 2, Episode 7. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And of course, you can get me on Twitter at Wibble89, and you can support the show financially over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv, for as little as $1 per month. So thank you very much for joining me once again. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, have you got any vanilla?